I'm gonna try to go extra quick so that we can get to the live demo because I think the product is pretty amazing. And um, Josh, that was our feedback from Kellen. So we're gonna try to spend more time in the not in the code, but showing you the configuration and how the product works. We're gonna try to hurry through kind of the work, the build up um to that so that Josh has more time. And do you guys ask a lot of questions in the Q&A? Does your audience ask a lot of questions? Do they like to ask questions?
It depends on the topic. So,
Okay, well, we'll leave some time for Q&A, and then if we don't have time if there's no questions, we can ask the audience to ask the chat that we build a question about the Martin County Library and see if they can break it.
okay, awesome. So I
Okay.
am I am going to share my screen so we can get started. Thank you everyone for I'm also admitting other people who are joining. So let me see. So thank you everybody. Oh, my. Thank you everybody for attending April's webinar. Our topic, and I'm excited for this month's topic, it's conversational search, AI innovations for enhanced user interactions. And our speakers today are Andy Kucharki and Josh Estep of Promet Source. And please correct me if I mispronounced your name. So before I hand it over, I kind of want to talk about Drupal4Gov and what we do. Most of you are familiar with Drupal4Gov, but for those who are not, we are a community of open source advocates, and we're interested in all things open source. So in addition to this monthly webinar that happens every third Thursday at 3 p.m., we also have a conference that we hold yearly, Drupal GovCon. We do the global training days, half training days. And we also participate and organize the Gov Summit at DrupalCon North America, which is coming up in a few weeks. We also have, hopefully I can share more information about Drupal GovCon next month, but we are thinking August for our next conference maybe, so stay tuned. If you are interested in contacting us, please email us at drupal4gov@gmail.com. We are also available on Slack or LinkedIn. I have to give a shout out to our sponsors. We can't do this without them. Thank you, Debug Academy. They provide Drupal training. You can get Acquia certified, and we appreciate their sponsorship. We like to share all of the other events that are happening in other areas of the state. So I just mentioned DrupalCon that's happening May 6th through 9th. And then in July 2nd through the 12th, Drupal Asheville in North Carolina is happening. Also, if you are interested or you are attending DrupalCon and you have a particular topic that you may think is interesting to the community, please reach out to us. We wouldn't mind helping, having you help us maybe share your knowledge at Drupal Gov Summit. Also, we're always looking for places to host half days and multi-day events. So if you have the space and the location to hold an event, please reach out to us at drupal4gov@gmail.com. So if you miss a session, a webinar session, we currently are live streaming to YouTube, but all of our other past webinars are stored on YouTube. So check it out. It's a lot of good information you'll find there. And last but definitely not least, I'd like to introduce Andy Kucharki, president of Promet Source, and Josh Espy, a senior Drupal developer at Promet Source. So I'm going to stop. Welcome and thank you. Such a timely topic. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. Very much, very happy to be here and present to you all. Am I sharing? Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Wonderful. So today's dive plan, as we call it, today's agenda, what we're going to do is just do a high level, very quick welcome, tell you slightly about why we're here and how we're here to talk about AI. We're going to talk about LLM, so large language models, probably most commonly known as AI or ChatGPT or OpenAI or by the other brand names that are out there. So why this is fascinating. We're going to spend very little time on that. Then we're going to talk a little bit about why we decided to build the large language model chat search. So this is a conversational search bot that we were hired to build for one of our customers. We're going to talk to you about our considerations and approach and strategy. So what we had to consider when building it, what are some of the fears that we had, some of the things to look out for, how to deal with hallucinations, which is a euphemism for chatbots making things up. We're going to review the architecture. So there's an architecture diagram that I'm going to go over, and then I'm going to step back and let Josh talk about the actual architecture. How did he build it? How it works, what the data interactions are. We are going to take, during the architecture review, we're going to talk about ChatGPT and also some of the things that we build and worked with on Bedrock, which is Amazon's offering, and Cloud, which is a competitor to ChatGPT. We want to spend a majority of the time on a demo because that is the most exciting time. So maybe not majority, but we're going to try to save as much time as possible toward the end for the demo, and through Josh's screen, maybe help get feedback from you, from the audience, on how to interact with it, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A. So here we are. We already did the introductions. I do want to give a shout out to Casey, who is our marketing director, who made this possible, and she made sure that our slides were done and we were on time and we practiced and when you were talking about. So the Promet team, thank you. We are Drupal experts. This is how we got to Drupal Con and Drupal4Gov, which is one of our favorite events of the year. We have experts working on our site. We turned 20 last year. We have experts working with us. We strive to have teammates who have at least 10,000 hours of experience in their craft and are certified. And so we like taking certifications and tests so that we don't just say that we know what we're talking about. We actually have a third party evaluate to make sure we know what we're talking about, and we pass those certifications. That's usually Drupal, as well as accessibility. All of our project managers are PMP certified. We, as an organization, are the highest level partner with Acquia and Pantheon. We're a sponsor of Drupal. We're a migration partner, a certified agency with Drupal.org, and a contributor. And we build Drupal as well. We are on a GSA schedule, and we are working with federal, state, and local agencies. That is our purpose in life, and the organization's purpose in life is to work with you, folks like you. And so, of course, if you're in need of Drupal or AI help, we'll be happy to help you. All right. So, why a large language model, and why build a search using a large language model? So I want to spend a little bit of time on this, not a lot. I cannot click to my next slide. There we go. I'm sorry, I'm having a technical difficulty. Am I still sharing or did I stop sharing?
Sure.
We're still sharing
And what do you see?
a chart, green and bluish.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I got behind. So,
Okay.
why LLMs? Hopefully, you're here because you have used one of the models, ChatGPT, or Claude or Gemini. And so, what we find is interacting with these things that are incredible. We think that they're profoundly going to change our lives and how we do our work. So, this graph represents standard testing and how ChatGPT 4 performed on those tests. So some of the things that I found, I was blown away is that ChatGPT 4 passed the bar exam. Not only did ChatGPT pass the bar exam, but it scored really high on LSAT, all the standardized testing, the AP. Actually, in preparation of this uh, presentation, I took a deep dive as to what the advanced placement US government test is, in which ChatGPT 4 did very well. And these models are continually advancing, right? So the blue bars represent ChatGPT 4, the green ones are ChatGPT 4. And it has been announced that the next version of OpenAI GPT is going to be released sometime this year, and it's going to be even more advanced. And so, in this press release, when these were released, the statement which is pretty obvious, but I think profound, is that while less capable than humans in many world scenarios, ChatGPT exhibits human-level performance on various professional and academic benchmarks, and they're able to prove that. Of course, if you look at Anthropic, which released Cloud, Anthropic is a company that was started by co-founders of OpenAI. We're keeping an eye on this as well because this is a very advanced model as well. Last month, just recently released Cloud 3, also demonstrating to the world how capable its model is, right? And so you have a model that you can interact with that basically has most of the world's knowledge available to it, and it can pass basically most standard tests that we use on humans. So it's a pretty compelling reason to try to use it. And so we've been wowed by this, as some of you have, and so we started our own journey and path as well. And so the first foray into this, we bought a product. It's Otter AI. It's essentially and it's present now. Zoom offers these types of things, but basically it transcribes meetings and it understands them. You can ask questions. So we're a virtual company, not a virtual, but distributed. We're not in person. So we have a lot of Zoom meetings, like a lot of Zoom meetings. Unfortunately, it seems like so many, it's too many. And so what we use it for is to summarize what's happening with other areas of the company. Or we can go away for a week and quickly catch up on what was going on a client project or what was going on internally without having to attend all those meetings. We can get summaries, we can get action items. I can even ask it. This is a recording of our webinar preparation, and I asked Otter, "Is this going to be a good webinar?" And I got a really good answer. So I'm positive that you guys are going to enjoy this because our large language model based on our conversation model is going to be pretty interesting. We also started using an AI system in our Jira. So this is an example of a ticket that asks a developer to fix a image. We have a little button that we can press, and AI analytics will convert that ticket that says the image on this page is not stretching correctly or it's not running correctly, and it provides instructions to the developer on how to fix that ticket. What I like about it is also provides a test strategy on how to verify that the work is done. And that, in this particular case, it's pretty simple, but it helps us in two ways. One, it forces our business analysts or project managers, or sometimes it prompts our clients to write better tickets. Because if you write a little bit better ticket, the AI system can take that and extrapolate so much more that it's meaningful. And so there is a better understanding and helps us in communication. And it's a very low cost product. Then we started looking at how we can improve our experience. And so we wrote a meta tag AI module. This module sits on top of the meta tag module. If you're not familiar with meta tag, it's a fantastic module that improves your search engine optimization. So it provides many, many fields that you can add to your node or content, such as description, tags, search engine title, and you can create custom tags. And what we do is we take the content of your page. So as a content editor or a press release, you have this content. We send it to an LLM of your choice. It analyzes, and we ask it to provide SEO tags, meta tags, to optimize search engine results when somebody searches for the content that you wrote, and it returns those tags, and we put it into the meta tags, and you're able to publish that. So it's a very simple but a module, but with a specific purpose that makes life easier for content editors by reducing the time they have to spend on creating additional content. So now we're intrigued. We think they're amazing. We know that our language models can answer a lot of questions, and so we're starting to talk to some of our customers, and we are starting to believe that we can build a better. Well, the search engines already exist, right? The LLM, Bing and Google have released conversational search engines, but we are circling around the idea that we can build specialized search chat bots that interact with the users and provide answers to questions about the site or a set of content on a site, and provide a better experience because it's a conversational experience. The hypothesis was that the LLMs are going to infer and better understand what the questions are about, and provide better contextual responses, and provide ongoing conversations. So you may ask a question, but you have a follow-up question, and to continue that conversation, it's natural. And even so, to the point where once we build such an interface through APIs, eventually we might release it to Google Conversation Assistant or Alexa or Siri, so that you don't need an interface. And so we were hired by Martin County in Florida, beautiful place, to create a search bot. And they had some, this is for the library. And if this goes well, it will be expanded to the entire county's content. It's a fairly large county. We want to, and the objective for us is to build a conversational chatbot that answers questions about the county's, in this particular case, what we're doing right now is the library system. So, for example, when the library opens, how do we get a library card? We do not want it to answer questions about why the sky is blue. I want to leave that cost off of the library's books. And we wanted to, there's a couple other criteria, but one of the ones is that we need to log this data for next 7 years, so store that data for next 7 years. And so we're going to tell you about how we did that. So another piece of history here, and we're not going to talk about this today, but we did build a version of the chatbot on AWS. So AWS has a pretty rich offering. This might be a webinar for another time. We would love to be invited to talk about this. But this was a prototype on our own site. And what's remarkable about this is that we were able to get all of the tooling, and we were able to build a prototype, a working prototype, in 2 weeks. So we used AWS Lambda to process our requests. We used open search, so which is a vector engine to index the Drupal site. It does, and we build Drupal plugins so that AWS Open Search was going to crawl the Drupal database. And then we did utilize Anthropic Cloud, and we took the question, just like we are going to do in this case, and so the information that we searched on the vector engine to get answers, and it worked pretty well. So I did borrow this graph from the URL below. We will share this deck. I'll give you a URL at the end of this presentation so you can take a look at all the assets here. And we evaluated a few options, and we decided to build this in ChatGPT, OpenAI ChatGPT 4.0. The way we set this up on Drupal is that our customers will be able to easily swap out to another LLM. And so I'm going to talk about how this works right now at a high level, and then Josh will take it again at a much deeper detail. And so the way that our architecture is set up is that as a user, I will ask a question. What are the library hours? How do I get a library card? How many libraries are there? And the typical question, like I suppose any questions that I may want to ask about the content of the site. This chatbot JavaScript that pops over, which looks like you're probably accustomed to seeing these chatbots on many sites, looks very similar to that. The first thing that we do with that question is we ask the LLM. So the user's asking this question, could be short or long. What are the keywords that we want to use to search the content of our website for the answer? So we get the key. So we send a question as it's asked in a chatbot to the LLM. It returns the answer, the keywords. We take the keyword query and we hit Solar with it. So Solar is a very popular search engine that attaches to Drupal very well. And the reason why we use Solar and not a vector database is that we were finding that with minimal investment, we were finding great, we were getting the answers that we needed. So Solar works just fine. And the other aspect of it is that because it works, it connects to Drupal. There's been lots and lots of work done with that. The content editors don't have to. There's nothing special that we have to do to update the content or to make sure that the LLM has it. So we create Solar for the content. We get the results. Then we take the question that the user asked, and we provide the content, the results from the search engine, along with that question, along with system prompts as to how the LLM should answer that question. We get the answer, and we display that answer. And then we can continue and repeat with some additional parameters. So that's generally the process. It's called augmented answer generation. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Josh so that we can. Do you want me to keep these slides up, Josh?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right. So today I'm going to discuss the planning, development, and prompt engineering for an AI-powered conversational chatbot, and I'll give a demo of our chatbot solution. So starting with planning, first of all, you need to identify the goals and use cases. What info should the chatbot provide? Is it going to be all data available on the website or just a subset of that data? Will it need to provide any services like integrating with external APIs to fetch additional data? What kind of personality should it have? Should it take a more casual tone or be more serious? It's helpful to request example questions and answers from stakeholders early in the project, so that'll be useful for prompt engineering later. It's also helpful to potentially identify behaviors or requirements that might inform the development. For instance, in our case, the need to retain data for 7 years. And once you have this initial information, it can be helpful to do some prototyping. You can, for one, determine which LLM solution or solutions may be appropriate just through testing. Decide how you want to make the website specific data available to the chatbot. So there are two general ways this is done. The first method is retrieval augmented generation. So this just means passing website specific data to the LLM as part of its system message. And the system message just being the kind of the rules of the road for the AI and how it's supposed to behave. So pros of this approach is it can immediately provide newly added or published data. If content's unpublished or removed, chatbot will stop providing that content immediately. And the cons for retrieval augmented generation is increased latency because you're passing more data and there may be some back and forth that's required. However, this can be mitigated somewhat through caching. And then the second way of providing website specific data is fine-tuning, or training, which means you're generating a custom LLM model. That is good because it has a lower latency, but it will take extra time to train. And if the training is automated, there's some complexity there, and there's a delay for urgent updates or changes that need to be applied. And you can potentially take a hybrid approach. We explored both of these in my testing. Using a fine-tuned model worked pretty good, but this is a library system, and we wanted to make sure the chatbot could accurately answer questions about library hours. And during my testing, it kept making mistakes, so we went with the retrieval augmented generation solution. So next slide, please. So talking about the development of a chatbot, I think queuing is a must for this. Some mechanism for handling multiple concurrent requests. This is good for ensuring you don't hit any rate limits with your LLM API. And it just generally ensures a predictable behavior. Also, temperature is another factor here. And we talk about temperature. Temperature is this thing that determines how random an LLM's response is. If you set a high temperature, it can be pretty chaotic. If you set a low temperature, it answers more the same. So I think a best practice here would be setting a temperature of 0, and that means you will always get the same response. It makes it deterministic. So it helps with testing, regression testing. It helps with troubleshooting. So if an issue is reported in the midst of a conversation, maybe gives a wrong answer, you can perfectly reproduce that conversation to better resolve that issue. There will need to be some safeguards. So there should be a mechanism for handling inappropriate user input. Our approach was to use OpenAI's moderation endpoint, and this determines if the user's input breaks OpenAI's terms of use. So this serves a few purposes. It ensures our API key won't get flagged for improper use. It helps to give a way to flag if a particular IP is showing a lot of inappropriate messages. And if there is inappropriate use, it saves time on the using GPT-4 Turbo to do fancier language processing when the moderation endpoint can kind of handle it. So we looked at implementing a profanity filter as well, which you could do, but since the user's messages won't be displayed publicly, and it's not particularly necessary, and also because legitimate use could include profanity. So if somebody says, damn, when's the library close, it's probably better to just answer that question. And then another facet of safeguarding is an appropriate volume of use. So there should be a mechanism for identifying excessive volume of use, and either let the user know they've hit that volume or maybe throttle its responses. This could be something done at the hosting level, or it could be done within Drupal. But the main thing is to just make sure there's not excessive number of messages. Users, you would expect, maybe to chat for a few minutes, but if somebody's talking to it all day long, that's going to incur extra costs with the API. It's going to increase latency for other more legitimate users, so there needs to be some limitation there. Another facet is you need to be able to support extended conversations. So it's important to add a mechanism for that, for compressing conversations. It's because large language models they are stateless and have no memory. So they have to be sent the entire conversation with each message to be able to have that context to generate response. And also each model has a limit to how much content it can provide at the same time. So as the conversation gets longer, it has to be compressed to ensure this limit isn't reached. And also, compression reduces the latency because it takes longer to respond with a larger conversation big set. Now, when compressing conversation, I've found it's good to leave the first few messages and the last few messages uncompressed just to help ensure you have the last context and the beginning of the context. But for the middle bit, I've been using what I'm calling the utility model, in this case, GPT 3.5 Turbo, to do compression. So that way, even if you have a 30 message conversation, the AI is only seeing something like 8 messages. So it works a lot better. And that leads to the use of a less complex model. So you could use it for conversation compression. You can use it for identifying keywords to fetch website-specific data, any kind of tasks like that. Generating a message saying the AI doesn't know, but still keeping the context of the conversation in mind. It's great for GPT 3.5 Turbo, but I want to use the latest and greatest version, like say GPT-4 Turbo, for generating the conversation itself. Also, caching is helpful. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. So it's good to cache the first few messages in the conversation. So for instance, if you're asking library hours, then maybe the AI clarifies which library, because in this case, there's multiple libraries in the library system. You can cache some of those responses. You don't necessarily need to cache everything because it's unlikely two users are going to have the same exact conversation, but just caching the first few messages helps, cache that context and give better performance for common questions. And it's also important to mention that it wouldn't make sense to just cache every response individually because that loses the context of the conversation. And the next, chat history. So it's helpful to retain a record of chat conversations. It's helpful for testing, troubleshooting, and potentially it's needed. It's a requirement of the project. Beyond that, it's also helpful to track statistics. So, for example, giving the user option to rate chatbot responses and submit feedback. That's great for troubleshooting and great post-launch as well. And then finally, testing. It's potentially useful to include some testing functionality. It might be as simple as including a button to verify the LLM API responses are working. You could potentially introduce some automation and actually leverage AI to help simulate chat conversations. So there's a lot of potential for testing because we already have these AI tools available. We might as well use them. Next slide, please. So once the development's done, the next step is really refining the chatbot's behavior. This is going to happen through the development phase, but once the structure of the chatbot is implemented, it's a matter of polishing. So it's an iterative process, and it starts with referencing a list of questions and answers. So, so it's good to spend some time working through that list, refining the system messages, the system message, and it's important to retest after making a change to avoid regressions. And it's helpful to have a spreadsheet as well so that you can reference and potentially collaboratively add items with the stakeholders. It's also good to experiment with asking multiple questions in a single conversation. As you test, it's likely you may identify edge cases that need to be addressed in the system message. For example, the need for, in our case, we flagged the need for multilingual support. And the nice thing is, being GPT-4 Turbo, it's great with speaking different languages. So it's just simply adjusting the system message was enough for it to handle that. So once you're happy with how the chatbot's behaving, it's good to coordinate with stakeholders and continue refining. I think a screen share call is a great way to do that. You can test different use cases, do some regression testing. If issues are identified, you can potentially modify the system message settings and potentially solve issues while you're on the call with stakeholders. I've also found it's helpful to add a debug mode. So, that could be it could be log messages that get generated. So if there's something weird happening, you can see, okay, what was the actual curl request being sent to the LLM API? Another trick I came up with, though, is adding a particular keyword phrase that if you include it in a message, the chatbot goes into debug mode and its response will answer freely. And so you could ask it, why did you answer that way? And potentially even have a conversation with the chatbot kind of out of context of what its normal task of answering website questions, and it can potentially help you refine your system message. So again, you're having these AI tools at our fingertips, we can leverage them to even in the development process as well as as a end user tool. And with that, I think the next step is for me to demo. So I'll share my screen. So first I want to talk about conversational chat. So it's nice if you could ask a question like, where are the library hours? And have the chatbot, kind of talk to you like a person. It doesn't necessarily need to regurgitate a bunch of hours. There's a bunch of different libraries in this library system. So I know the library in question I want to ask is Blake Library. So there we go. You might notice it answered really quickly. That's because these questions are cached when we rehearsed this presentation earlier. But the next questions won't be cached because it only caches the first few. So another facet of this is website specific information. So if I say, do you know about Batman? So GPT-4 could write 100 essays on Batman, but that's outside the context of this use case. So ideally, we just want to acknowledge the user's message, but then let them know the question's off topic and try and guide them back to the task at hand. So this was generated by GPT-4 Turbo just now. So I'm here to help with information about the Martin County Library. If you have any questions related to the library or services, feel free to ask. Sometimes it'll mention the question. In this case, it didn't, and multilingual support is an option. So if I ask about the hours in Spanish, it can pick up on that and just give me an answer. It's pretty easy to do. So again, I'll say Blake. And as you may have noticed, it took a little bit longer because this wasn't cached. And then I'll ask another question. So how do I get a library card? This will probably take a little bit longer just because it tends to give a longer answer for this question. If it takes too long, it may display a please. Yeah, there we go. So it's better usability to let the user know that a process isn't happening. You don't want to worry that it's broken while it's fetching information. So, and then here's our answer. Looks like it switched to stay in Spanish here, which is actually not correct, but in any case, it did answer the question. So yeah, so next I'll give you a look at the settings for this. First off, we implemented this with two modules, Promethia Core and Promethia Chatbot. So Promethia Core abstracts out the integration between different LLM APIs. So this way, we're starting with OpenAI. We're going to, I'm sure, integrate Bedrock and some others. I think if we had implemented this now, we would be most likely using Claude 3 Opus rather than GPT-4 Turbo, because I think it's just a little bit better, but that wasn't available at the time. So this adds some flexibility. If a new model becomes available, we can switch to it. You can potentially specify a custom model if we decide we do want to do some fine tuning. There's just a lot of flexibility with this approach. So that way we're not needing to update a bunch of code in a bunch of different places if we switch to a different solution. We can just define a new one here and be ready to go. Next thanks form is for the chatbot itself. So this solution can support multiple chatbots per site. You can define additional ones. Currently, we just have one defined. So some kind of self-explanatory text fields, intro text, the chatbot's title, and an initial intro message, the message displayed when there's a delay and how long you should wait before that delay happens, some conversation starters. So these are just buttons you saw at the beginning. Now this setting here takes a little bit of explanation. So when you're interacting with an LLM, you give it sort of the rules of the road as a system message, but we wouldn't necessarily want to include all the rules that we want to follow all the time. We want to be mindful of latency. We don't want to take too long to respond, and so we can conditionally include instructions and data as needed. So this first example is library hours. Now, this data is available on the website, but it's pretty important to get it right. And furthermore, we want the chatbot to ask the user which libraries hours they need rather than just giving them a wall of hours. So, and I also include instruction here to list them in an order list, like bullet list. So the way this works is if either the user's message contains one of these keywords, each line is it could be a phrase, but in this case it's just words. Or if the AI generated search phrase used to fetch website specific data matches one of these words, then this content over here on the right could be instructions. In this case, it's both. This gets included within the system message. So we're contextually adjusting the system message based on the conversation. So just kind of to summarize, you have your general system message. I'll show you what that looks like down here. You have your what I'm calling phrase value pairs as well. And then you also have any website specific data that needs to be provided. Now, if it can't find any of that, then like my Batman example, it just says I can't help with that. If I didn't do that, if I didn't limit it, then it would be very tempted to give a longer response and maybe make some assumptions that may or may not be true about the library system and what Batman related, content is available there. So let's say another example here is a study room. So if a user asks about a study room, and they might use different terminology, but if the AI-based search phrase picks up on this, then it will follow this direction and give them this link. And then here's the system message that's kind of usual for LLM-based integrations. You're a library assistant, AI chatbot dedicated to providing information about the Martin County library system. Please assist users with inquiries related to this library system only. If they ask about something off topic, politely let them know you can't help. This is something we've refined a bit. I'm sure we'll refine it more. This last bit is pretty important. So your source of truth is the system message. I have hard coded in the code for this some additional instructions to make sure it gives top precedence to these phrase value pairs. Then it gives precedence to the website specific data that's provided, and it does not rely on its data set except to give it context. So the GPT-4 Turbo knows about the Martin County library system, but its data may be outdated. It might know some hours, but those hours might not be correct. So it's important that in this case, we're not really asking GPT-4 to provide information about Martin County library system. We're asking it to assist us with, refining, with turning what is essentially a glorified search into a human conversation. So, beyond that, the last thing to mention is the cache max age, which is just how long we want to cache content in the first few messages of the chat. Saving this form will clear this chatbot cache. Clearing Drupal caches will clear this chatbot cache. So it's pretty flexible. If there's, say, an emergency, you could, add something here, some additional information. We also, just as kind of a feature to help with usability, you can comment out items with 2 slashes. So there's a lot of flexibility, and you can modify the chatbot's behavior instantly. Even if the user's anonymous, it's going to immediately update if content changes in the same way that Solar Search would update. So that's the settings. And then lastly, I'll show you the chat history. So this is implemented using views data export and view custom table. So this is regurgitating some information from the DB table used to retain chat history. This is a requirement for this project, but either way, it's really helpful to have this. So if you're troubleshooting, you can ask for the chat ID. In debug mode, I actually display the chat ID so that people testing will be able to provide what chat they were using when the issue was identified. So if I go to the last page, you can see some of the, this is when it incorrectly responded in Spanish. That I would have expected it to switch to English. I will probably refine the system message to address that issue, after this call. But in any case, I can click through here and view our demo conversation. And then once we integrate the user feedback, that will be displayed inline as well. So it's great for troubleshooting. It's great for just general data retention purposes. And because we're using Fuse Data Export, you can click the CSV button and it will create a CSV download of whatever you've got displayed. So, if you filter the search by a certain value, or say if I filtered by a chat ID, then I can export just that. So this is good for a date range as well. And with that, I think we can proceed to QA. If there's any example questions we want to try, this is the old version.
Josh, can you ask it, can you show the debug mode? Or ask it to switch to English?
Sure. English, and I'll probably have this field break into 2 lines later on. This is a new UI. Please switch to English and explain why you answered that last question in Spanish when it was asked in English. I'll probably apologize. Oftentimes, if you ask GPT why it does something, let's see here. I apologize. That was an error on my part. Responding, I should have. It always does this, and you have to kind of press it. So I could say, Promet debug, please help me understand how to modify the system message to correct this.
Someone is asking, are the answers coming directly from the source document or generated by the LLM?
All these answers are generated live by the LLM currently. But the data itself is coming from source search on this Drupal website. So the way it works is we programmatically execute a view. It happens to be a solar search view. It doesn't have to be. That view is filtered by a field that identifies library specific content. So we don't want to answer off-topic questions. There's more to this website than just the library system. And so it programmatically executes that view, packages that information up, and sends it to the LLM so that it has context. And so, I did debug mode to correct this issue. System message, you might want to include clear directions about language handling. For instance, the system message specifies response to match language. And then it actually gives a recommendation for what I could add. So, I don't think we should go down the rabbit hole too far with this, but I could add this to the system message, and then we could reproduce this conversation and see if it fixes the problem. I will do that later.
Someone followed up. So if same question asked by multiple users, the answer will mostly be similar?
It should be, because the answer is coming from the website's database. This is designed to avoid the chatbot coming up with an answer from its default data set. It's essentially a glorified search. So if you ask a question, GPT 3.5 Turbo in this case views the conversation so far and decides upon a good keyword search phrase. It runs a keyword search. One thing I didn't mention, if it doesn't find results, it broadens the search and tries again. It passes the results from that to the LLM GPT-4 Turbo to provide the answer. And I also mentioned those key value pairs. So if there's a match with those are passed as well. So this is really it really is just like a glorified search, just like a hopefully really easy to use search. So you don't have to try different search terms. You don't have to browse through different pages of results. So if you can find a result to a question in the search, you probably will be able to get that result from talking to the chatbot.
You have another question. Are you planning to write a blog post regarding this implementation, since most of us might be able to leverage your setup?
That's a great idea. We have already, I think, written a checklist of some pointers. I think we might actually be sharing that after the call. And I think there's a good chance we will also write a blog post.
So I do have a resource for everybody. The presentation, the link to the presentation here, and some other additional resources. But yes, we will definitely be happy to share more, especially as this goes live.
Another question you have: if people want to research more, can it give them suggested pages on the website?
Research, that is actually something we're working on right now. There are ways to do that potentially, but this is view-based. So in the view results, we can include a URL to the content in question, and then instruct the AI to include that link as it sees fit. But that's a feature we are definitely going to be implementing for this.
But I think is the question about resources for how we built this and how we got to the solution, like learning. Okay, we can answer that.
Yeah,
Josh answered it. It was Josh's answer was what I was looking for. Thanks.
Okay, the next question is: the Solar view only available for the authenticated users?
No, this is for anonymous users. The way it works is, well, I mean, that's a little bit off topic, but yeah, the answer is it's for anonymous users. It could be for authenticated users as well.
Do you have any metrics for Solar versus Vector, a database that supports similar research, similar search, similarity?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't gathered metrics for it, but I think the argument against using a vector database is that, so the great thing about Solar is that it can return results based on relevance. And because it already does a good job of that, it does it quickly. And because it's pretty plug and play with Drupal, it's better for this. So if we want to implement this on another Drupal site, we don't need to worry about setting up a vector database. We don't need to worry about the costs associated with that. We don't need to have a mechanism to automate syncing data to the vector database. Solar is I believe, a pretty decent alternative to that approach. We certainly could integrate a vector database as well, though. So it's just that there would need to be a mechanism to sync the Drupal div to the vector database. And one thing the stakeholders for this particular project are interested in is being able to make sure that changes to the content are quickly reflected in the chatbot. So Solar is great for that.
And which hosting provider are you using?
This is Pantheon, but it wouldn't really matter. It could be Acquia, it could be platform.sh, and it doesn't have to be Solar. It could just be a Drupal database view. But if it is a Drupal database view, we'd certainly want to make sure that view is using caching, and we'd want to test to make sure it's not too slow in returning results.
How many contributed modules did you use? Was it 2 modules?
Just 2 modules: views data export and view custom table.
Hi, Tim. You referenced modules you are using, but I didn't find those modules on Drupal.org or elsewhere. Are those going to be published, or were they specific to this project customer?
Those should be available. Here's views data export. I'll just drop that in the chat real quick. And then view custom table. There you go.
And I'll provide links on the page to the page I put in the links above, Drupal4Gov 2024 on prometsource.com. I'll add those links on that page.
Another question. Can you cover again how solar impacts how the LLM responds?
Because solar is really quick in responding, it means that it takes, so the first step is that the LLM identifies a search phrase to send to solar. Once that's done, the next step is running the solar search, in this case programmatically executing a view that is using solar. Because solar is really quick, that doesn't take very long. If there is a few seconds delay, that would be suboptimal. So solar, the main benefit is, one, it responds really quickly, and two, it is able to sort its results based on relevance.
And how are you blocking bad words in chatbots?
So in this case, we aren't necessarily blocking bad words. We are using an endpoint that OpenAI provides called moderation. The moderation endpoint will take any text you provide it, and for one, it gives you a list of numeric responses based on different topics like hate speech, violence, some other things. But it also has a field called flag, and if that returns a value of think 1, that means that OpenAI would reject that response, and it breaks their terms of use. So the first thing we do when a user asks a question is we send that question without any context just to that moderation endpoint. And if it's flagged, then I'll just show you. So I will, this is an example that OpenAI provides. I will kill them. So it will probably say, I can't answer that. Yeah, so that was a single call to the API. It didn't have to do anything else. And if we go to the chat history, let's reload that. I also set it up to add a little violation flag here, so that way it's easy to, here's another test done yesterday. It's easy to get a list of violations. So if maybe it's the same IP address, then you might want to look at blocking it, that kind of thing. But in terms of profanity filtering,
I want to bring up the diagram, Josh.
I'm sorry.
I said you may want to bring up the diagram on slide 17.
Yeah, I can do that. Let's see here. Yeah, in terms of profanity filtering, we could do that, but there are so many edge cases, and because this isn't publicly, the public will not be seeing this chat dialogue. And also it's good to mention that it's stored in an anonymous way. We were tracking IP address, but we're not doing anything to, store user specific data. So, if I say, damn, when does the library close? That isn't egregious enough to be flagged by OpenAI. So, if we did start doing profanity filtering, we would probably want to use AI to make sure that we got the context right. And we could do that. It would increase the latency a little bit, but it wouldn't really be a big deal. I just don't think it's needed for this particular use case, but it's not a problem to implement.
Next question. What about the chatbot module that seemed to be called Promethia? Is that available?
It is not currently available. That's probably more of a question for Andy, but it's, yeah, it's pretty simple answer, I guess. Yes, it's not currently available.
Next.
We are.
Sorry, Andrew.
We're looking at, so we have a distribution for Drupal specifically built for our government customers. And we may look at including it in that. That's called Provis, and that is available on Drupal.org. But stay tuned.
Next question is, I am using Google Vertex AI conversation service with Gemini with RAG, Drupal content. Have you been trying to use the Gemini and any insights to compare two approaches?
I have used Gemini. The LLMs I've experimented with are Grok, from X. I've experimented with the different OpenAI models. I've experimented with Claude 3 Opus. I have experimented with Gemini Advanced. In my opinion, the best one right now is Claude 3 Opus. But the thing about Claude 3 Opus is it can, at least talking about in terms of the app, it can't do web searches. I think Gemini does a really good job. It's particularly good for fetching, web data. I mean, maybe that answers a little bit off topic, but in terms of API work, I've mainly focused on OpenAI so far. And as a company, we've done some work with AWS Bedrock as well.
And then we built this module in a way that we can connect to a number of the LLMs. Hopefully, we will work with Pantheon in a partnership with Google on implementing this with them. And as you saw in the beginning, the progress that these companies are making is continuous, and they're leapfrogging each other. And so we think that in the end, it's going to be kind of like connecting to one of the cloud services, whether it's Azure, or AWS, or Google Cloud. They're continually going to innovate and get better and better and better. So I think this will work with any of them, any of the leading models.
And I think we have another question regarding bad words. Can we populate a list of bad words in configuration instead of using the API?
So we could do that. I did actually experiment with a profanity filter. I encrypted a list of bad words because I didn't want to just have it in my code. Or it could be done as a setting. But the thing is, it's more than just filtering bad words. If, like my example here, I will kill them. You also need to contextually filter inappropriate content. So you really kind of need some. I mean, I guess you don't need it, but it's very helpful to use an AI mechanism for filtering inappropriate content. If you're implementing a solution where the conversation or whatever it is public, then you would certainly want to do that. And I would still use the moderation filter because it's pretty important that you are not breaking terms of use. But I would probably have a second layer where I, just give a system message saying, here's the conversation so far. I mean, you wouldn't even need to offer a conversation necessarily, but I would probably do it to be safe for context. Give the conversation so far, ask it to, return yes or no, whether or not the latest response in the conversation is inappropriate or doesn't contain, is it hateful? Is it off topic? Is it profane? And then you could respond based on that. Or you could maybe just generate I can't respond to that response based on that. So in our case, I don't think it's needed, but it wouldn't be a problem to implement.
I think the steady stream of questions have ended. Oh, we have one more. Does the library have a children's story time? What other services do you have for children?
Oh, just somebody ask a question.
Yeah. I don't know if is that a question to
I could ask it. That wonderful program tolerance imagination library.
She says she wants to see something other than ours.
Then check it out. It also gave a link here, so that it decided to do that. Even I'm still in the process. I'm in the prompt engineering phase of this development now, and having it display links is very helpful, and it's going to be useful. So it's interesting to me that it just decided to provide a link without being prompted to. So I'm glad it did. This goes to here. So I don't know if that's the correct link. That's another question, but if you're interested in signing up for more information, you can check out the details here. I don't know if this is the correct link, but I'm still glad that it provided a link.
It is a Martin County library system, so it is within it's not on a Drupal site, which is interesting.
And also ask, how are you implementing your prompt engineering?
how am I?
How are you implementing your prompt engineering?
It's a kind of trial and error process. So I start off with thinking through, okay, I know we want to limit, I want to let it know it's a library assistant. I want it to let it know that it's just supposed to help with questions related to the library system only. And I clarify if they ask about off topic, do not, don't help them with that. And I remind it, I think multiple times, to prioritize information from the library's the website's data versus its general knowledge, its data set. I want to keep answers simple. I chose a fifth grade ring level kind of arbitrarily. I mean, I think that's a thing. Like, I want to say maybe that's a thing where newspapers have in the past tried to hit a fifth grade ring level, and potentially this could be used by kids. So we don't want to use fancy words unnecessarily. We want to keep it simple and easy to understand. There are, so your persona should have these attributes. This was provided by the stakeholders. This is how they phrased it. And this is the line, this is the instruction related to languages. I'll need to adjust this to make sure it doesn't, make sure it knows that if I switch back to English, that it should switch back to English. I kind of figured it would figure that out on its own, but maybe not in all cases. So we'll need to refine that. Multiple times I've reminded it that it needs to focus on the Martin County Library System. And, this is initially set in stone. I'll probably experiment with trying to make it a little bit shorter if I can, but this one so far is what it's kind of evolved to, and it's working pretty well. This bit, when displaying links, please show the link HTML as link label. That's just my preference. I like if it's going to provide a link, maybe somebody isn't going to click it, maybe they're going to copy it. If it's displaying the actual URL, then that's easier to do. And then I remind it again that its source of truth is the system message and the information contained with it. So it should always take precedence over its data set. And I tell it why as well. So but it didn't look exactly like this when we started off. It has just evolved over time. If we find edge cases or find issues where it's not answering questions correctly, for example, when we first, I think we were on a Zoom call with the stakeholders and somebody mentioned Spanish, and I was like, well, it definitely can, let's try it out. But it didn't, it refused to at first. It just made a judgment call that wasn't ideal. So on that same call, we added the line about Spanish or, about different languages. And it could also do Japanese, by the way. We tested that and many other languages, but it fixed it. This is all we really had to do, is add this verbiage, and it's done a pretty good job. We did just now identify an issue that needs to be addressed, but overall it seems to do a pretty good job of handling Spanish. So that's probably a good answer. Any other questions?
Well, thank you again for the presentation. It was definitely an excellent one. We got a lot of questions and we went over by 7 minutes. So I definitely hope that you return and share more information.
We'll be happy to do so, and please check out all these links are available on Drupal4Gov 2024 on our website. Casey provided those links, and we'd be very happy to talk to you again about our Bedrock implementation or any other AI topic that relates to Drupal.
Awesome. Thank you, Promet Source, and thank you for all of the attendees. And I hope to see you again next month. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.